So, do y'all know nothing about credit cards like me? Well, good thing we have Spencer here to teach us everything we need to know.
If you're somebody new to credit and you have no idea where to start, luckily, me and Tessa today are going to be applying for her very first credit card ever. And for those of y'all that don't know, Tessa is my girlfriend, who I've probably mentioned a bunch of times, but never actually shown on camera, so here she is.
So, it might be hard to believe since I'm dating Spencer, the credit genius, but I don't have a credit card and I don't even know if I have a credit score.
As of right now, she is an authorized user on one of her mom's credit cards, which is definitely a good start and why I recommend that most people do that if they can. But she doesn't actually have a credit card of her own yet, even though I've tried to tell her many times to do it. So today we're actually going to be applying for the Chase Freedom Unlimited for her, so y'all can see that process live and also see how to get a credit card for yourself if you've never gotten one before. So first of all, as y'all know, I do really like the Chase Freedom Unlimited as a general catch-all card, as well as a card that you should probably get started with if you can. The only reason that we're starting Tessa off with that one is because she does at least have some kind of credit history by being an authorized user on her parents' cards. But if you're someone that's never had a credit card and don't even think you have a credit score, then I'd probably recommend that you get started with Discover's line of credit cards, especially the Discover It cashback card. And if you can't get that one, then I would get the Discover It secured. But since Tessa does have at least some kind of credit history behind her, and we actually know that she was pre-approved for the Chase Freedom Unlimited in her Chase app, that means we can go ahead and skip that step and move straight into Chase's credit cards, which I'm a big fan of. And the first thing we're going to do, because obviously she's my girlfriend and she wants to travel with me every once in a while, is we're going to use one of my referral links from Chase to get me some points as well as get her some points for the welcome bonus. So the first thing we'll do is come over to my channel, of course, and go to one of my most recent videos where I should have all the referral links to book travel for down in the description. So as you'll see, we'll have the Chase Freedom cards linked down below here. That's for both the Chase Freedom Flex and Chase Freedom Unlimited, which in this case we're applying for the Chase Freedom Unlimited. So once we click that link, it's going to bring us over to Chase's website. And as you can see here, you can choose from any of the Chase Freedom line of credit cards. Definitely don't go for the Slate card. It's not a good card. It's only good to transfer balances between cards if you did have debt on a credit card before. But in this case, we're not going to be doing that. She's not a student anymore, so we're not going to be going for the Chase Freedom Student, although that is a card that I would recommend getting if you haven't gotten a card before.
So question. I know my Chase account is still under college student account. Is it going to be a problem?
No, so
I'm no longer a student, but I just kept it.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. So even for myself right now, even though we're both graduated as of May of last year, I still have my Chase college checking account and I haven't actually changed to their typical one, which you don't have to either. It doesn't make a difference for these applications since your bank accounts are completely separate from the credit cards. But since you do have a bank account with Chase, it theoretically is going to help you get approved, which is a good thing. It's also how you probably got pre-approved for this card because they know your finances already. And then these are two of Chase's new Freedom cards, the Chase Freedom Unlimited and Chase Freedom Flex. A lot of people do love the Chase Freedom Flex, but in our case, we're going to actually be applying for the Chase Freedom Unlimited today, mainly because I know that you're a person that doesn't necessarily want a ton of different cards or having to keep track of activating 5x categories.
No,
yeah.
I'm not good with balancing my finances. I have one card right now and it's a debit card, so.
Yep, that is the sad part, but today we're going to change that.
Hey, it
hopefully
works.
But yeah, like I was saying, the Chase Freedom Unlimited is a very simple card to use. You really never have to think about whether you should be swiping it at certain locations or not. You can just use it for everything, and it's a great catch-all card.
Perfect.
So as you can see here, she's going to get a $200 welcome offer after spending $500 in the first 3 months of getting this card.
I can definitely do that.
Yeah, and it's not, I mean, this is actually probably the easiest bonus on like any cards that I've seen to hit, and it's basically at least a 40% return on spend just by spending those $500, so that's pretty cool. And then on top of that, she's actually going to get the 5% cash back on grocery stores for the first year of having the card.
Can I change that to get 5% cash back on maybe something else?
No, so Chase does do different categories for their welcome offers. It was 5% on gas last year, but they changed it back to 5% on grocery stores. And for the most part, I don't know if I've seen anything different than that. Maybe they have in the comments, but I've only ever seen these two.
Guess I'll just have to stop going out to eat.
Very true. But luckily for you, you still will get 3% back on dining, 3% back on drugstores, 5% back on travel through Chase's Ultimate Rewards portal, and 1.5% back on everything else.
Wow.
So like I said, it's very easy to get a ton of use out of, especially with this 1.5% back on all purchases. That's a good table minimum to get started with.
So every, like say I spend $100 on a meal at a restaurant, I'll get $3 back. That's what that means, right?
Technically, yes. So that's another good point. Everything that you earn on this credit card is actually going to be Chase's Ultimate Rewards points. So you're not going to get direct cash back into your account, but those points can be converted to cash back, or you can use them for travel through their travel portal, or eventually eventually, if you get a higher tier card with Chase, like I have the Chase Sapphire Preferred or Reserve or anything like that, you can transfer your points out to travel partners like we're doing for Hyatt and get a lot more value from your points that way. But whenever it comes to like cashback value, you will be getting technically what you just said, 3% back.
Okay.
So every $100 you spend on dining, you'll get $3 back.
So could I ever cash it out or no?
Yeah, you can cash out whenever you want. You can redeem it for like gift cards. You can redeem it for travel, like I said. So there's a bunch of different ways you can get value from it. But the only ways I would recommend ever doing it are going to be cashback if you want just a quick money back in your pocket. You can use it through the travel portal to get the same amount of value if you have one of the Chase Freedom cards, which half the time it probably makes more sense to cash it out and just pay for the ticket in cash anyways.
Okay.
And then, like I said, later down the line, you might be able to transfer these out to travel partners.
Awesome.
Okay, so now that we've gone through a little bit of the details of the card and why she's applying for it, let's go ahead and click the Apply Now button. And now we can just go ahead and walk through what the application is going to be asking you for, and then we'll obviously fill it out off camera. And hopefully, obviously, you'll be approved, but everybody's going to have to watch to find out. But what the application is going to ask for is just going to be your general personal information, like your first and last name, your mailing address, date of birth, mother's maiden name, email address. Of course, it's also going to ask for your social. And then one of the more fun lines is going to be your income, which we can talk a little bit more in depth about here in a second. Other than that, it'll ask for your type of residence, whether you rent or own, which we don't have enough money to own, but
We rent.
and then also your primary source of income, your phone number, and a couple of other questions before you go ahead and review the terms and submit the application. So coming back up to the total gross annual income, you're going to want to put all of the money that you actually earn in a given year, and that's going to be before you actually report the taxes on it or anything like that. It's your total gross annual income from all sources. But for the most part, for where we're at, just graduated and having a full-time job, it's going to be our gross annual income as well as any bonuses we may have gotten this past year or what you expect to get in the coming year.
So for the mailing address, I don't know if it matters at all, but like I rent and I'm moving out of the place that I'm staying in August. So I don't want it to be a place that are always sending me mail. So should I just put it as my parents' address?
So you could do that. You could put your permanent mailing address here, and that's where your card will be shipped to. That's where your card will be tied to. And every time that you pay with your credit card and they ask for your zip code, you put your permanent address as zip code. So for me, I always used to put my permanent address and I put my parents' address, but recently I changed it to my rental. The only thing about that is like, yeah, now I do get all my cards and everything I need in the mail here, but in 5 months or whatever, I'm gonna have to go in and change my address in Chase's website to a different one. So we can always put permanent address and that'll work out just fine.
Okay, so I don't really understand why I have to put in all this information because I already have an account with Chase. They know my name, they know my social, they know my address. Why do I have to put in all this information? Especially because I'm already pre-approved for this card.
So that's a good question because technically, since you were technically pre-approved for this card in the app, we could have probably just gone through with it in the app itself. And since you were signed in, you probably wouldn't have to input any of this information. You basically just click submit. But since it's technically bringing you through a different route, you're going to have to put in all this information. Just, it's kind of semantics. It's still going to go exactly as it would if you had done the pre-approval link. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and fill out all of her personal information and we'll be right back to click the submit button.
Quick question that I thought of while I was filling this out. Do I include utilities when I put my monthly rent price?
So technically, this is probably something I should have mentioned earlier, but in all of your credit card applications, you want the lowest debt to income ratio possible. So what that means, obviously, is that you want to report the highest income you can while reporting the lowest amount of expenses. So in this case, you would not want to include your utility costs unless that's somehow part of your rent payment. But since they're just asking if you rent or own and what your payment is, I would just put the flat rate that your rent cost would be.
Okay, and so that's also why for my gross annual income, we decided to include like my bonuses.
Yeah, you always want to be as honest with these numbers as possible, of course, because they could technically request your tax forms or something like that. But as long as you're in the ballpark of what they're going to be expecting, if we put, like 300K here, you might, they probably would request something from you.
Don't make that.
But since we're putting reasonable numbers, you just want to be, like I said, as honest as possible while rounding up with the income and down with the debt, basically.
Okay. That makes sense.
Obviously, that's not financial advice, but take it for what it's worth. Okay, so now all of her information is filled out here, and we basically just have to read the terms and conditions and submit, or should I say read the terms and conditions. Some of the things I would look out for here if you are interested in seeing some of the bigger numbers that you should focus on are going to be these annual percentage rates. I personally never actually look at these because we're never going to pay a card late and ever accrue interest on our credit cards. But I guess it is cool that they do have a 0% intro APR for the first 15 months. If you did have credit card debt and you needed to transfer that balance balance over to a no annual percentage rate card. But in this case, it's obviously not going to be of use, and we're just going to ignore the percentage rate altogether. And then other than that, we just want to know that this card is, since it is the Chase Freedom Unlimited, it's not going to have any annual fee. So obviously it's not going to cost you anything to hold this card every year, which is important for especially your first credit card ever. And then on top of that, there are other fees that come on your card that are important to know and pay attention to. For example, if you do a balance transfer, like is what we were just talking about, if you were to transfer your balance from this card to another card, you're either going to get charged $5 or 3% of the amount of each transfer. And that's only within the first 60 days of having the account. After that, it's either $5 or 5% of each transfer, whichever number is greater. In this case, we're not going to be doing that, but that is something to keep in mind if you were somebody that wanted to transfer your balance off of a card. And then there are other penalty fees, like a late payment fee of up to $40 if you don't pay your card off on time. And then you don't have any over the credit limit. I've actually never even read that line before, but that's kind of interesting. And then you do have a return payment charge of up to $40 as well. And then there's also no return check fee. Okay, so now that we've read the terms and condition and filled out the application, Tessa's going to go ahead and submit her application. And I'm going to let you click the button in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, submit. Oh, wait, we forgot to do something. Just kidding. It'll be fine. Hopefully, let's hope it goes well at least. Well,
so we don't know anything.
Yeah, now we have to wait.
When will I find out? Well, I mean, I'm already pre-approved.
So this is a little bit confusing that they didn't just auto approve you. It's probably because it is your first credit card, but since you were pre-approved in the app, it might just take a while for their systems to read that you're the same person applying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that would be the case, but it does look like they're going to take a little bit longer to review it. What we could do is call the reconsideration line right away just to see if they could just flip it to an approval right now. Mainly because we did see that we were pre-approved in the app. It seems like a pretty easy thing to do, but I would bet that in the next day or so, they're going to email you saying that you're approved. Obviously, let's knock on wood with that because that could go pretty bad.
What?
No, it's not going to go bad. Even if you were denied, it's not a big deal. We would just call the reconsideration line then.
Okay. So is this going to ding my credit score?
Yeah, so technically all that's going to happen with this is that you get a hard pull on your credit. And all that means is that your score is going to drop by like 5 or so points for a very short amount of time.
So I do have a score.
To my knowledge, you should still have a credit score with their systems as long as they can just do a back check on all of your previous history. And that's just financial history rather than just credit history. So theoretically, every time you apply for a new credit card, your score is going to temporarily drop by about 5 points. Since this is your first credit card application, it will affect whatever credit score you do have if you do have one. But like I said, since you're pre-approved, I have confidence that it's going to all go well in the end. And to answer your question, yes, it will very temporarily ding your credit score, but after like a month or two of paying your card off and building that credit history, your score is going to be a lot higher than it was before because you didn't really have a credit card to start building up your credit score.
Okay. So another question. Now that hopefully I'm approved and everything, I'll have my first credit card. How long should I wait till I get a new one? I know your kind of rule of thumb is like 3 months, but you also like have a lot, you know what you're doing. Since this is my first one, should I wait longer?
Yeah, so for your first credit card, I always recommend you wait about 6 to 12 months after getting it to build up the credit history because your score is going to be lower at the beginning. But once you have that credit history built and you start making on-time payments and everything like that, your credit score will rise and the credit card companies will be able to trust you more as a credit-worthy person because they see that you're paying off your cards. So you'll have the ability to get approved for higher tier cards or just more cards in general. But after you get that second credit card, you can kind of speed that up a bit if you wanted to. I imagine you're not going to be one to speed it up or anything, but at that point, that's when I usually try to apply every 3 months or so if you have a lot of cards you're trying to get. At the end of the day, you can get them even quicker than that, but I just don't necessarily recommend it right when you're getting started. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't recommend getting one right after you get your first credit card. So what we're going to go ahead and do is call the reconsideration line real quick because we checked her Chase app and it does still say that she's pre-approved for the Chase Freedom Unlimited. So theoretically, there might be some kind of documentation thing they need. So we're just going to call real quick and see if we can get the approval over the phone. Basically, all that Tessa's going to tell them is that she just applied for the Chase Freedom Unlimited after seeing she was pre-approved in the app for the card and was wondering what the status was on that because it said it went to review even though she was pre-approved.
Welcome to Chase Card Services. One moment while we connect you with a specialist. Welcome to the Chase Customer Service Center. Our office is currently closed. Please call back during normal business hours. Thank you.
Well,
that was abrupt.
I guess they are closed right now, but we can always call in the morning and see what happens then. If anything happens between now and then, I'll obviously add it in post. But as of right now, the credit card application is still in review and we'll see what happens tomorrow.
Yeah.
Hey everyone. So I got an email basically just saying that I've set up online payments for my credit card. So I never really got one saying that I was accepted, which confused me at first. But then I showed Spencer and he basically just told me like, oh, you've been accepted. So then after seeing that email, I went to my Chase app and look at that. My credit card's already on here. Isn't
Boom.
that crazy? It's so exciting. I'm so thankful for all the guidance that Spencer gave me. Without him, I never would have been able to get a Chase Freedom Unlimited credit card. And now I'm going to get cash back on so many things.
And yeah, thank you, Tessa, for being in the video.
Thanks
and
for teaching me everything I need to know about credit cards.
I do what I can, people. I do
Yep.
what I can.
Well, everyone go like and subscribe. Spencer's a great teacher. You should follow him.